The modern open-plan office is a high-density sensory environment. It is defined by humming fluorescent lights, constant digital notifications, and the strict requirement to remain physically stationary for 8 hours at a time. For an employee with ADHD, this environment presents a series of biological obstacles. Distractibility triggers a reaction to every passing shadow. Restlessness makes stationary work physically painful, and the brain's low threshold for stimuli creates a state of constant, exhausting friction. Society categorizes these behaviors as character flaws. Because the worker struggles to conform to the standardized expectations of the modern desk, they are labeled as lazy, undisciplined, or incapable of focus. This chart tracks the long-term impact of that social friction. While a typical baseline remains stable, the rising red line shows the accumulation of thousands of failure experiences, negative feedback from teachers, employers, and peers that build up over a lifetime. This cycle of failure assumes that the ADHD brain is a broken version of a typical one, but we may actually be looking at a highly specialized cognitive system that is simply operating in the wrong era. 70,000 years ago, the human environment was a highly unpredictable landscape. In the Pleistocene, survival depended on the group's ability to manage this high-stakes ecosystem. Deep, sustained focus on a single task was actually a biological risk. If an entire tribe became completely absorbed in foraging or tool-making, the entire group lost its ability to detect a leopard or a rival band approaching through the brush. Survival required a division of cognitive labor. While most members focused on the task at hand, a small percentage needed a different attention calibration, one designed to scan the perimeter. This is the Sentinel Hypothesis, the idea that human groups needed specialized members to act as an early warning system. There is a specific mathematical sweet spot for this role. If everyone acts as a sentinel, no one gathers food. If no one acts as a sentinel, the group is vulnerable. Evolution seeks an equilibrium, and across human cultures, the biological prevalence of ADHD remains consistent at roughly 3 to 5%. We survived as a species because our brains were not all wired the same way. Neurodiversity was not a mistake. It was a strategy for collective survival. Many clinical symptoms of ADHD function differently in this context. Distractibility is actually hypervigilance, a low neurological threshold designed for wideband environmental scanning and the detection of faint, ambiguous signals. Impulsivity, meanwhile, serves as a crucial survival reflex. It is the tendency to commit to action before a predator can close the distance, bypassing slow, deliberative processes in favor of immediate response. In a high-threat environment, the cost of a false alarm is negligible. You simply run from a shadow. But the cost of a missed threat is total. The ADHD brain is calibrated to minimize that fatal error. Even physical restlessness had a highly specific function. It ensured that the sentinel's body remained in a state of readiness, primed for mobilization the moment a threat was detected. In the Pleistocene, these traits were not symptoms of a disorder. They were the core components of a functional survival mechanism. The Industrial Revolution radically altered this relationship. Human society began constructing environments that demanded highly standardized behavior, moving away from the varied demands of the natural world. We invented the factory and the modern office, requiring strict adherence to the clock, forced physical immobility, and hours of sustained focus on repetitive, non-renewing tasks. Modernity inverted the evolutionary math. Physical threats were replaced by administrative and social ones. Now, the cost of a false alarm, interrupting a task to react to a stimulus, registers as a professional or academic failure. The human genome did not change during the last 2 centuries. Instead, our culture built an infrastructure that actively punishes the sentinel brain for functioning exactly as it was designed to. For the modern office worker with ADHD, the ancient hypervigilant system is still firing flawlessly, but in a safe, indoor environment, that radar locks onto email notifications and background noise instead of predators. This is evolutionary mismatch. These heat maps show the same biological trait yielding opposite results across settings. An ancestral advantage falls into a zone of modern prejudice. The data proves the trait remained stable. The environment changed, turning a survival asset into a clinical syndrome. Recognizing this origin does not mean the modern suffering is fake. The friction between the brain and the office is real, the impairment is significant, and the disorder requires compassionate clinical treatment. The Sentinel Hypothesis replaces the stigma of laziness with the reality of biology. It frames the patient not as a defective worker, but as a specialized mind currently operating within a rigid, mismatched world.